Good morning, everyone, and welcome back. Today is November 18th. So, I got an interesting email that I'm going to talk about here in this video. I received it yesterday, November 17th, in the afternoon. And I was a bit excited to see that it deviates from the typical emails that I've been receiving in the past several months relating to video topic requests on cuckolding. Now, granted, I like to talk about alternative sexual lifestyles, don't get me wrong, but it's a breath of fresh air when I receive an email that kind of deviates from that typical norm. So I appreciate this email, and I'm like, yes, this is a different topic, and it's right up my alley because you guys know I do like to engage in intellectual, stimulating conversations and discussions on race-related issues. That's right up my alley. That's what my dissertation was on. My dissertation actually was on Black identity, acculturation, and implicit racial bias. So I love it. I love these topics, though sometimes it can get kind of played out. Talking about race can get very draining and played out. This is Biloba. I think I'm pronouncing it right. Biloba. Yeah, I feel like, and I said this recently, how it feels like this whole racism, race war, this is what it feels like to me, right? It feels like being pulled on this stage, right? This stage of politics and racism, because it is a stage. Also, it's a reality too. I know some people are like, oh, it's very real. Of course, it's real. But what is reality, though, right? Reality is something that I think we all co-create. And when I think about participating in race politics, and this race war, it reminds me of being an introvert or antisocial, right? And let's say you get invited to a party, a social gathering. You go to the social gathering. Before you go, your mind is set that, okay, you're just going to sit back and chill in your own zone. You're not really going to engage and participate in the activities and the games that they have. You're just going to be like an observer, right? Then you get there and you're chilling. You know, maybe you're sipping on a glass of wine, right? Maybe you're eating some finger food, and then someone hands you a fucking bingo card. You're like, no, I'm good. No, thank you. No, and they're like, here, take it. No, thank you, right? That's what it feels like. I feel like racism, right? There's this whole stage of politics. It feels like that. It's like you have your mind like, no, you don't really want to, right? You're not really here for that. That's not what your purpose is in life, right? But then, because everyone else is doing it, right? And this is the stage that has been created. Now you get kind of sucked up into it. And so now you are having to take on a role and play this game that you're really not interested in playing necessarily. But you play it anyway. And you might be really good at playing it, but it's not what you had in mind, right? Another analogy, it's like, you guys know I'm in the BDSM world, right? It's like going to an underground BDSM private party, and you're like, I'm just gonna go and sit and observe. I am not participating in any of the activities, right? Any of the demonstrations. No, I'm not gonna be used as a puppet, right? For someone else's entertainment. And then you go, and then one thing leads to another, and before you know it, you're fully unclothed. Legs spread fucking eagle, arms spread wide open, and you just at the end of the night, you're like, how the fuck did I get here? You got there because you're in the mix. You're in the environment. Of course the environment is going to rub off on you. Of course. So I just feel like that's what the stage of race politics, it feels like. And it's many different ways you can look at this. Feel free for you guys who are watching live, feel free to chime in. For you guys who watch this video after it's uploaded to YouTube, feel free to drop your comments below. But it's many different ways to look at anything, right? And the way that my mind works, I look at things from different perspectives. And it's oftentimes a very balanced perspective, right? And I know you guys will see that. So I may present like an opinion on one thing, right? And I can have a very strong opinion on that side. And then I'll flip around within the same breath. And I'll go and I'll express my perspective, a different perspective, right? Counter argument to that. And be able to hold both perspectives at the same time, right? Genuinely. So when it comes to this race war, when it comes to racial oppression, Pan-Africanism, the fight, like I pose a lot of questions, many of which I've already asked here in videos, and I've said, like, for example, Dr. Umar Johnson. For you guys who don't know who he is, he's a Pan-African leader, conscious community, right? Based out in Pennsylvania. He's very passionate about his work to interrupt the school to prison pipeline. He has this, he's developed like this theoretical perspective and ideology pertaining to the woes, the problems that you see within the school, right? The school system, given that he is a certified school psychologist. He's worked in the schools directly with children, doing assessments, testing, basically testing required to classify children as learning disabled or any other disability, right? Classifying disability. That will put them like in special education. And so, you know, he's seen what many psychologists, including clinical psychologists, have observed in working in the field, right? That there are problems. That there are problems within any field, right? But there are problems, and that's his work, right? Alongside that, he is, you know, his background is in politics and psychology, and his inspiration, like his role models, and you know, people that he looks up to, his idols, include the likes of like Marcus Garvey and Frederick Douglass. And so I obviously am a supporter of Dr. Umar Johnson. I respect his work. I look up to him a lot. But I also have posed a question like, who are you outside of the work you do, right? For the black community in terms of combating racism and racial oppression, white supremacy, combating those. Who are you and who would you be? I feel like that's a question that many conscious leaders really don't take the time to dissect for themselves. Who would you be, right? Because sometimes they're so wrapped up into this identity of being this change maker, right? That they don't have an identity apart from that. And I think that's problematic because it essentially becomes a reactionary identity. Your identity is a reaction to this reality that has been created, that exists. So if the reality doesn't exist, or if the reality changes, which nothing stays the same, then that means that your identity will change, right? Now, granted, his work a big part of his work is to raise consciousness within the black community, and not just here on this soil, in American soil, but internationally, right? Raising consciousness in terms of our heritage, our identity, giving us a form of empowerment in knowing who we truly are, and alongside that, raising consciousness in terms of the present reality here that exists, the political landscape of what's happening, right? Globally, as it affects melanated people, right? As it pertains to us directly. That's kind of like his goal. That's his work. Like I said, like who would he be if racism didn't exist? If racial oppression didn't exist? If white supremacy didn't? Who would he be? And I'm like, why not get to being that person? Why not step into that identity of who you would be if these things didn't exist? I have a point here, you guys. Because honestly, and I've said this before, I think racism is a fucking distraction, yo. This is a higher level, I think, of we talk about consciousness, getting into one's higher self, right? Spiritually speaking, true consciousness, right? True elevation within the spirit realm is rising above all of this physical stuff, right? Including these systems, these socio-political systems that have been created. Capitalism is a system. Racism is a system. It's a distraction from life. That's why I say, what would you be doing if these systems didn't exist? Get to doing that, because honestly, it's a distraction. It's not to say you don't fight, because there's a reason behind the cause. There's a reason. You know, like, of course, you want to preserve yourself, but like I said, there's different ways to look at a thing, and I think that's when you really tap into your true power, the true power of the mind and the spirit, and knowing that a lot of shit is an illusion, yo. When you realize that it's a fucking illusion, it's not even fucking real. You make it real and you give it power when you give energy to it. And think about how much energy we've given to racism and white supremacy, right? We give that shit so much fucking power. We get sucked up when the media broadcasts these fucking race killings, right? We get sucked up. And someone described it in terms of, they use the language of getting kind of trapped in a certain timeline. They take you back to the timeline of what life was like before emancipation, before slavery, or during slavery, let's say, right? When we were enslaved in chains. It kind of takes you back to a certain, like, you could be living your life, right? Thriving, and you're happy, and you're glowing, and you're in tune with yourself, and you're at peace, and then boom, they have the power to create situations, to create scenarios that throw you off where you were, right? I feel like that's a form of manipulation. It's not to say that you don't feel, because you are a human being and you are connected to other human beings, especially if they're black, right? You resonate when you see that a man has been wrongly shot and killed by a white police officer. You see that on the media. You resonate with that. Why? Because you're black, right? No matter if you're a woman or a man. But I think a higher level of consciousness and awareness is like zooming out, right, of this current reality, zooming out a bit and looking at it from like a bird's eye view to see how you're being used, right? How you're being tampered with. And then you get tired of that shit. You're just like, wait, like you can't be easily manipulated like that. This emotionalism when it comes to these race killings, yo. And also emotionalism when it comes to religion too. Like all of these systems, you gotta know, like, hold on. I think that's where we talk about true freedom. People who talk about, finding freedom and being free. But true freedom is like thinking like a god, right? Do you think God is obsessed with race? Do you think God is obsessed with fighting racial oppression, with battling white supremacy? Like, that's like low vibrational shit, if you ask me. It's not to say that you're not aware of it. So I don't want people to misinterpret my words to assume that I'm saying like, okay, you become oblivious to it and you're like ignorant. No. But you rise above that. So I had to like preface this video with my initial thoughts that came to mind when I read this email. And it's also something I've been thinking about prior to this. Because you see how, like, you see how you're being, like, manipulated, right? You're just like, nah, you're not going to do this to me. Because they see it's a cause and effect reaction to it. And that's why it keeps happening, right? These race killings and, you know, there are people that go out of their way to make another group of people feel subjugated, feel inferior. And they play upon that. And you see examples of this in news, you know, with killings. You see examples of this, like, in commercials, just in the media. And you gotta know, like, come on, y'all. You know they fucking with you, right? You know they fucking with you. And because they know. It's just like a bully, right? A bully knows you're sensitive. He knows your weakness, right? And they say certain things. They pick on you. And you sit up there and you give a reaction. And they're going to keep doing it, right? Because it's a reaction. So, you know, they get off on that. And you keep feeding that shit, right? Not to say you ignore it or it goes away. But you have to definitely rise above that. And really tap into spirit, you know. So I'm going to read this email and I'm going to... What the hell? What are you doing out there? And I'm going to provide my reaction to this email. Honestly, the topic, blackwashing white culture, it basically, the email begins with, street cleaning or what? I'm curious to see what the hell is this. Oh, okay. Damn, that shit loud as hell, yo. What the fuck? Yo, they giving all kind of tickets. Oh, because it's street cleaning. You know how, like, in New York, they have street cleaning where you have to, like, clear one side of the street. And I was wondering why they was giving tickets on this side of the street. I'm like, those people aren't parked illegally. That's a parking space, but certain days and times they can't park there. I swear this is the first time I've seen fucking street cleaning. And over the past year, because of the pandemic, I've been working from home. I'm not working now, actually. I've been on an extended vacation since, like, September. My last client I saw was August 20th. So we're in November. But I'm about to get back to work. Don't worry. But yeah, like, my pre-doc internship, that whole full year, I've worked from home. I only went to the office one day out of the week to do psych evals, but so I'm like, I never saw that truck come down the street and clean the street. But anyway, So they opened this email by saying, "What are your thoughts on blackwashing white culture?" And I had to read that twice. I'm just like, hold on, did I read that right? Or did they say it wrong? Because I know about whitewashing, right? When I think about whitewashing, this is the thing. When people ask me, like, oh, what was it like living in Los Angeles? Because I did live in LA for 4 years. My first 2 years, I lived in Hollywood, California, which I didn't know where the hell I landed. I just kind of landed there. And I was like, oh, this is Hollywood. Literally, I didn't know. Actually, I landed, I think, in Burbank Airport. But it was very mystical. I lived in Hollywood for 2 years. And then I decided to move to South Central LA to be closer to my practicum site. So I lived in LA for 4 years, and people say, oh, what it's like. And I describe LA as like, okay, very superficial. I'd say it's cool. It kind of reminds me of Florida, the weather, the palm trees, and all of that. Really laid back, very slow as hell. Especially moving to LA from New York, with New York being a very fast-paced city. And then you go to a place like LA, and people are literally walking like turtles on the sidewalk. And I'm like, yo, this can't be real. So it was kind of like a culture shock moving to LA. But another descriptor, how I would describe LA is, I say it's whitewash. I say LA is fucking whitewash, yo. And they like, really? Oh, it's whitewash. And anybody know racism? Racism is something you can feel, right? I'm from the South. I'm from Jacksonville, Florida. Okay? People think of Florida as goddamn Mickey Mouse. That's part of it, but that's not Florida, right? It's a totality. Nah. Florida is very much the South, even though they don't want to really include it as part of the deep South. It's the South. And you can feel racism. It doesn't have to be said or spoken or acted upon. You can feel it. You can just feel it, yo. And so my sensors are very sharp when it comes to detecting racism and racist energy without a person saying a word. You just feel it. And I felt that like out in LA, just felt the vibe of the city, the culture of the city. Very, like I said, it's whitewash. What is whitewash? Is when, people don't even sometimes know that they are being whitewashed, or they've been whitewashed, right? Their culture has been whitewashed, right? It's basically like, and we think of washing as like cleansing, but it's really, honestly, it's a stain. You think about it. It's funny how we use words. The whole idea of white versus black, and white representing cleanliness and purity. White is a race, supposedly. And you think of what the word white means. Purity, clean. And black is like, oh, it's dark and it's evil, dirty. Whitewashing, like as washing means cleansing, right? But it's really a stain. If a person is disassociating themselves from their own culture, right, their native culture, to adapt to the ways of another culture, it's kind of like a stain, but it's a bi-directional process. So it's not so much that, okay, their culture is being washed, or I would say stained, right, or removed. It's like that person is adapting, they're assimilating, they're acculturating to the culture that they are brushing up against, they are interacting with, right? And typically that culture is the dominant culture. Dominant being dominant in terms of numbers, right? A numerical dominance, right? But it's political dominance too, though. It's not so much even based on numbers. When you think about it, it's really a mindset. I have so much to say, yo. Sometimes I pause because, like, I be having, my brain be firing, so I have to, like, organize my shit as I'm speaking, because I don't really, like, rehearse my videos. I don't have a script. My shit is all raw, unedited, uncut. I know some of you guys really appreciate that, and I thank you guys for appreciating that. So yeah, that's what you see. That's what I saw out in LA. I'm like, damn, this shit is white as fuck. But then you really get deeply immersed into the culture of LA, and you see, oh, these are not white people, these are Mexicans. How silly of me. And you realize they're Mexican when they start to speak and you hear an accent, right? Though the accent is kind of faint, you hear a Spanish accent. Because they're bilingual, they speak Spanish, they speak English, but like phenotypically speaking, they look white. I'm like, dang, it's a lot of white people out here. Where the black people at? Granted, like I said, when I first landed in LA, I landed in Hollywood, California. But yeah, they don't know that they're whitewash or they are acculturating. It's a process. It's like a subtle process that happens, I would say, on a subconscious level. I like to speak from personal experience. So even from speaking from personal experience, I've had people to tell me that, oh, I am acting like a valley girl. When I made a video about, oh, could I be Dr. Umar Johnson's wife? Someone commented, I will never forget, and it's like, oh, you probably could have a chance if you dropped that valley girl act. And I'm like, oh, you're calling me fake. So I get it from different perspectives, in a sense that I'm honest enough to admit that I do think that I have acculturated to the dominant culture within certain environments, right? And it's a natural process. We all do that, right? I think it's kind of inevitable to not be able to be impacted by the dominant culture or acculturate to the dominant culture or assimilate as you are advancing up the ranks within that culture. I think it makes sense on a practical level, especially when it comes to language, right? How you speak. Now, I'm from the South. Anybody knew me, like, let's say over 10 years ago, like before I moved to Atlanta, before I moved to New York, LA, and all of that, I sounded country, and I still feel like I sound country. I feel like it comes out here and there. I feel like when I left Atlanta to move to New York in 2014, people from New York definitely picked up on it. I was like, damn, you country as shit. You sound country. I'm like, well, from the South. And so I did kind of drop that accent because I feel like people didn't understand what the hell I was saying. That was the main reason. So having to repeat yourself, like I said, it's a subconscious thing. It's a shaping of your behavior by your environment. So if you are astute and you study people, right? You study like sociology, you study anthropology, you just study the ways of people. It goes without saying that, of course, we kind of adapt to our environment, and part of the adaptation is in the way we speak, right? The way we dress, the way we talk, the way we look, the way we act. And it happens, you don't even really be thinking about it, like, damn. And nobody is immune, right? So the super pro-black people, the people who assume that they are deeply rooted in their natural native culture and heritage and all of that, everybody has been impacted by this. No one is immune, right? Even white people, Spanish people, it don't matter what your ethnic background, your nationality is, your religion is, everybody, if you're a human being, you have the propensity to assimilate, to acculturate. And like I said, acculturation was one of the constructs I studied within for my dissertation research. And it is a subtle process. It's a subtle and subconscious process that happens. You're not even aware. You're not, okay? It's like I said, acculturation is like what happens, it's a process that happens internally when you're brushing up against a different culture, right? Your culture is one culture and you're brushing up against people from a different culture. You don't even realize it. A lot of people don't even realize these subtle things, right? For example, and I've talked about this before, I pay attention to subconscious behavior. I like to study like overt behavior, but I also like to study subconscious behavior too. The behavior that happens, that exists, that people are not even aware. They're not even aware, they're not cognizant of it unless you bring it to their attention and like, oh, okay. So I notice like in public how black people are on walking down the sidewalk. Something as simple as just walking down the sidewalk, right? And let's say there's white people also walking down the sidewalk because it's a public sidewalk, right? Something that black people will do is like lay out the red carpet for white people. Move all the way out the fucking way. I look at it as, I interpret it as laying out the red carpet. Now, one may interpret that as they just don't want to like be close to white people or have contact, but nah. I say it's laying out the red carpet because they do that when white people are walking down the sidewalk, and when I have been with a black person, right? Let's say I'm on a date, or you know, I'm just around black people, we're out. Black people be like, oh, watch out. Like, they'll tell you to move out the white person's way as if you're in the way. You're not really in the way, because there are many different ways that you can walk, right? It's different ways something you can go about doing something, right? But the way that their brain has been conditioned, and this is like, yo, these are the split-second decisions that take place, and they're not even aware, right? And I have to catch you, like, I'm like, hold on. One thing you ain't gonna do is sit up here and make it seem like I'm in the way. Move me out the way. Because that's not how it goes. I just had a recent experience like this, yo. I was at fucking FedEx doing a print job, and the printer wasn't working. Now, I know how to fucking work a goddamn printer, okay? I've worked in office settings. I know how to work. I grew up with technology. I grew up with the fucking internet. I know how to work technology, right? The shit wasn't working. I put in the code. It was like, oh, unable to print document. Please seek assistance or whatever from the staff. And so I let them know after I tried different ones, because I'm a person, I like to do things by myself. I'm very self-sufficient. I got this shit from my dad. Very self-sufficient. And I tried different ones, and then eventually I'm like, all right, let me go get some help, right? Since the self-service shit not working, for me at least at that time. And so I go, and there's a black woman, and she's like, I'm telling her what the issue is. Simple as that. Shit ain't working. Shit didn't print, right? She's like, oh, you don't know how to do it? Did I say I didn't know how to do it? I say it's not working, okay? It's not working. I know it's simple. Fucking steps right there. I've done it. I've come in that goddamn place and fucking print shit. I've done it, right? It's not goddamn printing out the document. It was only 4 pages, PDF, right? It clearly said, the little message said, unable to fucking print. It was unable to download. It didn't even download it, right? It didn't download. So I'm like, all right. So I'm telling her this, and she's gonna say, oh, you don't know how to do it. And I'm like, okay, I'm trying to be paid. I'm like, it's not working. I just said it's not working. I'm the kind of person, like, if I sell you something, listen, motherfucker. I said this. Are you not listening? So then, another associate, right, was like, okay, the guy working next to her, he was like, just write down your code. I can print it out from up here. So I'm writing down the code. The code is what? Goddamn 6 or 7 digits, right? Including letters and numbers. I write this shit down. I'm down to like the last number. And she's like, can you just move to the side? Yo, y'all know. I'm like, can I finish writing this down first? You're not going to sit up here and try to show out and be a fucking mammy in front of these goddamn white people, because y'all know I'm in the Upper East Side, so it's just a white neighborhood, right? It's black people that work, black and Latino people that work at the FedEx, but the clientele population is white mostly, right? I felt like she was trying to front in front of them damn white people. Talking about, could you just move down? And she was raising her voice. Can you just like scoot down? I'm like, She see I'm down to the last digit, and obviously I'm going to step to the side because the guy is going to take the paper that I write the fucking code on and go to the thing and print it out from the other printer. I was obviously going to follow him. I wasn't going to be there that long, but I'm just like, she was being impatient, like, okay, like, move out her way. That's how I took it. And so I had to stand my ground. Like, I'm from Florida, we stand our ground. Like, nah, you ain't about to sit up here and do me like that, right? Now, I'm not trying to create a scene, though, but I'm just like, I had to, like, let her energy know, like, that I'm not the one, right? And so I walk away, and she's like, oh, come on, I'll help you here. I just feel like subtle shit, like, I notice shit. Black people oftentimes don't notice it, but I'm always analyzing situations, y'all. I'm like, okay, I noticed the tone that she had with me and the level of patience she had. Well, she had no patience with me whatsoever, right? But when it came to, I don't know if it was a white man or a white lady, right? But I know it was somebody white that she was calling to be next, right? She just had a different tone and more patience. And I'm just like, okay. It's those moments, right? I study implicit racial bias. It's those moments. I'm just like, okay. She not aware. She not aware of it, but she's definitely cooning right now. So it's shit like that. When we're talking about acculturation, and yes, it made me upset. But when I zoom out and look at the bigger picture of the matter, like you're not gonna sit up here and toy around my fucking emotions, right? Because that's what happens, I think, with black people oftentimes. And then these experiences kind of are internalized, and it does affect one's self-concept, right? It affects how you see yourself. You see yourself through the lens in which the world sees you, right? And I'm like, nah, I check it at every time, and I do my own debriefing in my own mind, my own kind of follow-up, because I know what the fuck is happening, right? And I'm like, okay, this woman is not aware. She's just a fucking robot, right? Everybody is a robot, right? Just walking around programmed robots, right? Everyone has been socialized. She don't know no fucking better. Because if when you know better, you do better, right? She wasn't aware in that moment of herself and the way she was interacting with me. Because that's a conscious effort to interact with another black fellow woman a certain kind of way, right? It's a conscious effort that one must take to kind of undo this programming, this racial programming. So me being aware of it, I'm like, yeah, I was upset in the moment and bothered, but I walked away, walking home, and I'm just like, yeah, that's just a side effect of internalized racism that I experience, and I don't experience it often, thank fucking God. Especially here in New York City, and that's one thing I pride about living in New York. And I say this often, I say, well, I know racism, but I feel like living in New York City is not as overt. It's not even as present, I would say. Not that it's not overt. It's not even as present, period. Because there's so much, like, mixing of races here. And intermingling. And one can look at New York City as a salad bowl of cultures where there are many different cultures, right, from all over the world that exist here in this bowl, but we all retain our own identity within that bowl. And also New York City is a melting pot where we are all like enmeshed with each other so much. Looking at the trains, you see people on the train shoulder to shoulder. You have this contact with all these different cultures. It's like you don't have a choice, kind of, but to interact and to kind of come to an acceptance, right, of people from different cultures. So I feel like there's a high degree of racial tolerance here. and acceptance and appreciation, cultural appreciation. That I really value that aspect of New York City. Here is higher here, I would say, than any other place I've ever lived. So that's a good thing. But yeah, going back to this email, and that was just the first. Yo, he said, "What are your thoughts on black washing white culture?" That was y'all see how long it be taking me? I just be going deep. All right. He says, "Do you think it's unnecessary or is it a valid?" Now, that kind of set the stage for this whole race talk here. And he introduced this idea of black washing white culture. And I talked to you guys about, the traditional sense of what whitewash culture is. And I kind of gave an example of, living in Los Angeles, tied it to acculturation in a sense that I think it's a bi-directional process. So yes, a dominant culture, let's say, as in the European Western culture, can kind of wash out another person's culture, right? But then people within that minority culture, so to speak, that gets washed out also acculturate. So it's like a two-way street here, right? In giving the so-called minority culture, minority in terms of numbers, a sense of ownership, right? A responsibility in that your culture just doesn't get washed out, right? In that sense, right? You participate in that washing out or that staining of your culture, or that removal of your culture, when you subconsciously or consciously choose to acculturate, to adapt the ways of that culture, because it's part of your survival. I mean, not to point fingers, but you still own, everyone I think is responsible for their level and degree of acculturation, and their level of loss of their culture, right? They're forfeiting aspects of their culture to assimilate, to be accepted by a dominant culture. Now he goes and flipped the script to say that there is a thing called blackwashing, which is pretty much the opposite of whitewashing, I guess, in a way. But I had to question that, right? So let's assume that blackwashing is when black people like erase white culture or change faces, right? With symbols, with representations that should, I guess, embody white culture, but we play a role in kind of adding our face on it, in a sense, right? Like washing out their culture. And I'm just like, is there such a thing? Is there such a thing as blackwashing white culture? I feel like I love this email because it makes me think. I like anything that makes me think, right? And he's like very respectful in the way he posed the questions and presented a perspective that I haven't really quite thought about, but I'm going to think it out loud here with you guys. So I love it because I can't even count how many like comments and people, just the way people frame things. They don't know how to communicate. And express their perspective. They do it in a thoughtless way, and I like that. He was very respectful in sharing his perspective. So I would assume this person who sent this email is white. And there is a motivation for why he sent this email. It's something that motivated these thoughts, right? I'm going to address that too. Also, sense that the way he asks these questions, these are like leading questions. So it's like the way he asks the question, he's answering his own question. That's how I'm going to take it, right? He's answering his own questions the way he frames his questions, right? The answer is in your question. But clearly he wants me to talk about it, right? So that's why he's asking it. Do you think it's unnecessary or is it a valid? So for him to ask me, what are my thoughts on blackwashing white culture? That would that basically implies that he believes it's a thing, right? It's a thing. I didn't think it was a thing, but now I'm trying to think of examples of black washing white culture. Or is he talking about black people just adapting the ways of the dominant culture? He didn't give examples of like, what does that mean? What does that look like? To say something is a thing, to say that black washing white culture exists, is to provide examples of, first of all, give a definition, but even better to provide examples of what does that look like? What does it look like? For example, ... So now I'm in here in my mind trying to wrestle with maybe a possible example of what would that look like. I don't know. What first came to mind was the meme they made about Mona Lisa and how they had like a black face. They made her black. Mona Lisa's supposed to be white, right? And they made her black. That's what the first thing came to my mind of black washing white culture. Another thing that came to mind, which I wouldn't say is necessarily true, but this is a comment that was made on my video, which of course I blocked that shit. Why? Because I just like truth on my space. Truth, right? I don't like people spewing out lies, misinformation. So this person goes on a rant on one of my videos. What he was talking about didn't even pertain to the topic of the video, right? However, given that I made the video here in my living room with the backdrop being Isis and Osiris, and of course they're painted melanated, right? They're black. He had a problem with that, and he was just like, I think the same person sent me an email and talking about, oh, black people trying to steal white culture and painting the Egyptian gods black, and oh, they weren't black. Yeah, that's a whole narrative about, oh, they're not black. I don't like to engage in foolish talk, okay? I just don't. I just can't. I can't engage in foolishness, right? And even entertain the idea of that. Because he sent an email, I guess, expecting me to talk about. I'm like, I'm not making no video about that. He was being very offensive too. So that's the thing, right? This whole uncovering of African history. We know a lot of our shit has been fucking whitewashed. Has been not even just white fucking washed. Our shit has been completely erased, demolished. Like, we don't even fucking know where the hell we come from, we think we just fucking slaves here, right? And that's it. That's the beginning of our history. Leave it up to them, which is unfortunate. Thank you for the hearts. I see the love. I appreciate that. That's what we think, right? And so it's so much uncovering. That's why I really appreciate the likes of Dr. Umar Johnson and why you pronounce his name, bro? Ronoko. If I'm not pronouncing his name right, let me make sure, because I don't like to fuck people's name up. Ronoko Rashidi, right? I like the likes of him and Dr. Umar Johnson. Even Tariq Nasheed, his focus is on foundational black Americans. I think that the thing about our history, you can't really, when you try to go dig deep, right? Like an anthropologist, you're looking, you're trying to find shit, right? And a historian. And I know Tariq Nasheed has a focus on foundational black Americans, uncovering like our roots here in America. That's a great thing. But I feel like in his search, in his quest, and he gotta be honest though, because that's the thing with science, same as with historians, yo. You're gonna be a scientist, if you're gonna be an ethical scientist, right? If you're gonna be an ethical historian, what you find, you have to report, right? So in your search in your quest to find information pertaining to our history here in America, and you find that, okay, is, linked to Africa or this and that, like, you have to, why not share that information? But of course, I get it. Everybody has their own agenda, has their own narrative, so they're going to spin it how they want to spin it and leave out other parts that are really important, right? Can't do that. That wouldn't make you an ethical historian. Um, but yeah, I I think that there's so much of our history that has been just thrown away. Um, but I feel like if you got a little bit of common sense, right, and you use your brain, you know, goddamn motherfucking well, you know what's up. Because I get a lot of emails from white men, and like his email is unique, but it kind of tapers along the same lines of like a few other emails I received from white men who obviously feel inferior, right? And they need a sense of validation. They want me to validate them in their whiteness and their superiority. They ask me questions like, are black people truly dominant and white people genetically inferior? Like, can you provide, and some will be really aggressive about it, show the proof, right? I made a video on that whole thing about are black men dominant or black people dominant. I made a whole video. It's like I don't need to keep rehashing it, right? And how I substantiate what I'm saying in that video is just from basic common sense, right? And not only that, but science too, especially when it comes to genetics and the way we're made up as black people. I mean, there are white scientists, if you want to sit up here and try to qualify the validity of what I'm saying. I mean, your own people, white scientists even have studied this, have studied our race, right? Have studied our genetics and have seen that, yes, we do have certain qualities. And it's clear visibly that with the melanin that we possess is there for a reason. Something that we have, they have it too, but they have less of it, obviously. That's why they have a different skin tone. What does it got to do? What is melanin? What does it got to do with anything, right? This is where you begin to study biology and understanding that melanin is a receptor, right? And it's a way from communication with the sun, and not just with the sun, but with the universe. So think about that, right? I just saw this meme. Did I post it? I think I posted it on Facebook. If not, I'll post it about how black people, we do have a higher concentration of melanin, which gives us our pigment, right? What you see, our chocolate, right? And having that concentration in a certain region of our brain. And with that, how it affords us a certain type of intelligence. Because there are different types of intelligence, and white people have studied intelligence. Oh, yo, you just took the words out of my mouth, Master. So you just said it's an intelligence. Oh, we are vibrating on the same frequency right now, apparently. Before I read that, I just said intelligence, right? How it affords us a certain degree of intelligence. And boom. So we right here. And so white people study intelligence, right? And in their minds, intelligence is measured by verbal ability and is measured by processing speed and memory, right? And spatial, visual spatial abilities. I know this because I'm a psychologist and I do psych evals and I do IQ testing, right? And I diagnose people with intellectual disabilities so they can get services through the state. I've done that. And so that's their interpretation of what intelligence is, right? Because they didn't fucking create the whole goddamn intelligence test. So of course they're going to make it so that they have higher IQs and everyone else looks dumb as shit. All right, Sean Connor. I think you're a white man. I appreciate you though. Y'all got to go back and see the early part of my video because I gave a whole spill on spirituality as it relates to this whole construct of racism and the stage that we all have been invited to and the analogy that I brought up. So y'all got to go back and watch the earlier part of my video, which I'm going to tie it all in together anyway at the end. So Yeah, that's their version of intelligence, but we know there are different types of intelligence, right? And you know, we're playing like by their rules. We're like on their playing field, right? And so, of course, I mean, I think any people, if you're smart anyway, it's kind of. I think honestly, it's kind of it's natural to make your race like appear to be the winning race, or you know, to just like look out for your own people. I feel like that should go without saying. That's a natural thing. You know something is not right when you put somebody else above yourself, right? I feel like that's when you know like something has been flipped within you. Something has been kind of something's off, right? Um, and that's I think what we see in a lot of black people here in America is like uh, we don't even really value and love ourselves, and we put other groups of people above us. We value white supremacy so much to the extent at our own demise, right? That's not a fucking good thing, right? And so when I think of, it's different, like I said, it's different ways to look at white supremacy. When I think about white supremacy, it's not really white supremacy necessarily, it's just self-preservation, right? You know, looking out for your own goddamn people first. Making sure they eat, you know what I'm saying? Um, So he says, do you honestly think that many of history's important figures who we have been taught were actually black or brown skin, and that whitewashing has destroyed that fact? I wish he would have gave examples when he's talking about important figures. Like who? Maybe he's talking about like the Egyptian gods, you know, because a lot of people see my videos and they see my backdrop and they see, yes, I have, yeah, they're black. Why wouldn't they be black? Um, Continuing. I feel like the questions he's, like I said, the questions he's asking, the way he's asking them, he's answering his own question. So I don't really need to answer it because he already answered that. When he says, do I think that many of history's important figures who we have been taught were actually black or brown skin, and that whitewashing has destroyed that fact? Some say that Europeans have no history or beginning because they came from Africa. These are these are questions that white people be asking, yo. This is a white man, and I know why he's asking this, yo. White people are in trouble. Y'all in trouble. I feel like white people know they in trouble too. White people know they fucked up. That's why I feel like a lot of their fear comes from. Y'all gotta be honest, white people. See, I'm gonna get on here and have real conversations with y'all as a black woman. And y'all need to be honest enough to have those conversations with yourself. Some white people are honest though. They tell it like it is. They know what's up. And then you got some white people that be faking the funk and don't even know themselves. They don't know why do they get afraid. Part of their fear, yes, comes from socialization, conditioning, right? So often have we seen in the media black people being violent and, you know, being portrayed as the killer, the culprit, you know, criminal and all of that. So that creates that conditioning, which drives behavior in your belief system. It drives your perspective of life. And so when you're around black people in real life, you're afraid, you know. But I think a part of that fear also is deeply rooted in their spirit. And they know, like intergenerationally, they know they done fucked up. Massinissa says animals have intelligence. I think we all intelligent. It's not about black people having a certain type of better intelligence or being more smart. I feel like that's dumb conversation. Like, you guys got to go back and watch my earlier part of this video so that we can put into context what I'm saying here, because I've already talked about this white versus black thing, and I don't think it's that simple, to be honest. But now that we're here and we're talking about intelligence, right, and superiority and inferiority, let's talk about that, because, yeah, I want to make sure I cover this. And I've said this before when we're talking about dominance and superiority. It's like, of course, there's a narrative going around in the Black conscious community, right? And we esteem ourselves as gods and higher beings, and it's kind of like reverse white supremacy, or it's kind of like black supremacy in a way, right? And it's a form of empowerment for Black people. It's like we create a new reality, right? Like there's a reality, right, that has been constructed, right? The one that we live in. White supremacy, racism, and Black people are the inferior race, and white people are superior, right? That's the narrative. So being a Black person, in order to exist, right, and within that narrative, within that paradigm, you create a new reality, right? Psychologically speaking, for yourself, you create this new reality. I did draw an analogy though in one of my previous videos, because I had to ask a question, because I like to think, right? And ask a question. I say, what if perhaps this new reality that a lot of Black people, are living in, right? This new paradigm, and saying, okay, we're gods, and all of this great stuff. It sounds really good. It feels good, right? What if that is another form of psychosis? What if that is another... Now listen, before you get defensive, right? To say what if, it shouldn't be threatening. That's not a threat to anybody, because I'm Black, right? But it's just an analysis, right? It's just come on, just go with it for a little bit. What if it's a form of I won't say psychosis, but a psychological reaction, right, which we know happens in people who experience high levels of trauma. They disassociate from reality automatically, not like intentionally necessarily, right, where they're acting, but naturally, the way the brain works, the mind works, it disassociates from reality when you have undergone a lot of trauma, right? And it makes sense. It's a protective mechanism. It's an adaptive protective mechanism, right? So they disassociate these people, right, who have experienced trauma, disassociate, and they create like these different identities, right? And you see some of these people, they're on the street talking to themselves and this and the other. They have been classified as kind of being like socially awkward, things like that, right? We're not saying it's right or wrong. So I feel like part of having this discussion, your mind may go in the direction of putting labels like good and bad, right and wrong. It's not really about that. It's about exploring different ways of looking at a thing. Taking away the right or wrong classification. Even when it comes to mental health, right? And so drawing that analogy comparison to what we see here with the Black community, if you're up to date and you are aware of this new culture, and it's not really new, right? But it's new to some people. Where they are esteeming themselves like higher than being human, right? It could be a reactionary response to all of the shit that we've gone through living in America. Like, you think about the shit that the reality, you gotta just be Black to really understand, right? The shit the bullshit that Black people have been through, right? It makes sense to create like this kind of fantasy world, like being gods, and many people have even changed their names to like Egyptian god names and stuff like that. I'm just saying, I'm just posing a question. What if, right, that's in response to all of the trauma as it relates to the analogy I just drew with people who disassociate from reality, right? Just what if? What if white people did the same thing? Shit. I think that's even a valid explanation too. When you look at true scholars like the likes of Dr. Frances Cress Welsing, she explains white supremacy as like a reactionary system to white people coming to this understanding, this awareness that, damn, I'm fucking genetically inferior. So let me create this fucking fake ass system of white supremacy. But the shit is real because it's real life, but it's not real because it's an illusion. It's in your mind, right? And think about the mind. Yo, the mind is fucking powerful. That's why I like to study psychology. Is this powerful, yo? The mind's so powerful. What you believe is true. Like, you can believe something, think something, and then it becomes real. It's a reality, right? And so they came to that awareness, and then boom, they created a system. And then the system is fucking functional. Like, we're living within the system here of white supremacy. All right. All right, let's read this comment here. Emotional intelligence is very much as important than intellectual intelligence. Your EQ is very attractive and inspiring. I just want you to know that you're perfect exactly how you are. I think black women and men are incredibly beautiful. I appreciate that. Just got back from Texas. I live in Idaho, and I just love and adore your beautiful culture. There's an authenticity that's been lost in the upper middle class. What do you consider upper middle class, Sean? What's upper middle class to you? That, I think, even the hierarchy when it comes to this aristocracy, that shit is an illusion. But what is upper middle class? Like, we create these classes of people, lower class, middle class. Then the middle class has like 3 different levels. You have the lower middle class, and you have the middle class, and you have the upper middle class. I think it's just all baloney. Yeah, so creating this idea, like black people in a response created like this false reality of like, being gods. But then on the flip side, what if it's true, right? Because what you believe is true is actually true. Shit, if you believe you Superman, then your ass Superman. If you believe you got superpowers, then you do have superpowers. So sometimes you don't know what's illusion and what's real, because both, it can be real. An illusion, it can be reality. In fact, it really is. Alright, so he says, some say that Europeans have no history or beginning because they came from Africa, and Europeans descended from abnormal inferior humans. What? Hold on, I gotta read that again. Some said that Europeans, the way he spelled certain things made me wonder, like, yo, where the fuck you from, man? What the hell? Okay, but anyway, he says, some say that Europeans have no history or beginning because they came from Africa. What? And Europeans descended from abnormal inferior humans? What? Do you think, kind of reminds me of the theory of evolution, that Darwinism shit, that shit is baloney. I got into it. I cut a whole motherfucker off that I was dating. Because we went to, not simply because of that, but that was like part of it that like made me lose taste, like have a bad taste in my mouth for his ass. We went to the Museum of New York. I think it was that museum. And there was a exhibit in there. Wait, we went to that. No, we went to a few museums actually, I think, right? We went to the Museum of New York, I think, and we went to the Museum of Natural History. So it wasn't the Museum of it wasn't the Museum of New York. The Museum of New York, both museums we had, like, it was conflict, yo. Because, okay, the Museum of New York was conflict because there was an exhibit in there with, featuring Trayvon Martin and a few other victims of the race war, right? And his attitude was like, oh, Trayvon Martin died, so what? Like, kind of thing, right? He, like, literally said that, like, okay. He's, like, said it in a sense, like, oh, what makes him so special? Like, oh, he has an exhibit. I'm like, yo, that shit went right over your fucking head. But anyway, so that was that. Then we went to another museum where they had exhibit on the theory of evolution. A whole big ass exhibit at the Museum of Natural History. Those are nice museums, by the way. But yeah, I'm like, hold up. Like the museum, I was having a good experience until we came across that particular exhibit with the theory of evolution, right? Darwinism. I'm like, nah, that. Everybody know that shit racist as fuck. So I'm like, nah, cut it out, cut it out. He's trying to like justify it by saying, oh, it doesn't mean that we came from monkeys. It just means that we share a common gene or something. He was saying, as monkeys, we descended from them. We share like common ancestry. I'm like, mother, it don't matter how you cut it. It's saying this. You saying this that we came from fucking monkeys, yo. The hell? I feel like it's bullshit. And then the issue that it's not so much I have an issue with that premise, right? Because that could be true. I have an issue with the goddamn image. That's what I have an issue with. It's the goddamn image, the classical image of the theory of evolution and the colors within that image, yo. I mean, I feel like imagery is important, and there are a lot of subliminal messages within imagery. So that's what I have an issue with. Coming from apes, and the ape is darker, and then as it evolves, oh, it's standing upright, and it's becoming like a white man. I'm like, no. They could have came out with, I feel like it was a better way to paint that image, but that's the way that they chose to communicate the theory within that image, because that's their agenda, you know. If the agenda was to say, I feel like you should have used maybe a triangle or maybe a different type of fucking symbol to communicate that, okay, we share common genetic ancestry with the ape, but to do it the way they, nah, I don't like that. In terms of that linear image that they have, nah. All right, so I don't get that. Some say that Europeans, he said, some say that Europeans have no history or beginning because they came from Africa. This is where people be twisting up shit, right? Because it's like he done twisted that shit up real nice and fine right there. I have heard that some say that European people they don't really have a history. It's not that they don't have history, it's that their history comes from, we all come from Africa, right? And that what we see in terms of anything that we see that oftentimes has been attributed to them really comes from us. It's been stolen from us, right? They got it from us. Because if we go with the premise that, you know, we're the original people, we being African people or melanated people, shall I say, then every other race descended from us, right? But just now thinking about, just considering I just talked about the theory of evolution, right? When you think about that shit, right? Is it really let's go with the idea right here that we are the beginning. African people, we're the beginning. Every other race descended from us, right? Then we have this theory over here, theory of evolution. And evolve, right? Evolving means something is getting better. If white people descended from black people, do y'all see what the fuck I'm saying? I feel like this shit is all jacked up. It's just all jacked up. But anyway, that's why I debunked the whole theory of evolution. But anyway, yeah, he's putting like conflicting information, trying to justify one stream of consciousness by saying some say that Europeans have no history or beginning because they came from Africa. It's not because, it's the fact that their history begins in Africa, right? Or the Pangea. Now they don't have history because they came from Africa. What? And Europeans descended from abnormal inferior humans. Those are two different things. He put both in the same sentence, but those are two different things, yo. Some say Europeans have no history or beginning because they came from Africa. That's an oxymoron. If they came from Africa, they got history. As rich as history that Africa has? Come on now. The hell are you talking about? They have no history of their own? Or culture? Are you saying culture of their own? Because their culture really is rooted in Africa? Then he says in the same sentence, and Europeans descended from abnormal inferior humans. And? That's not an and. That's a whole separate sentence. How can you relate this idea that Europeans came from Africa with you putting this in the same sentence as they descended from abnormal inferior humans? Who are those abnormal inferior humans? Now, I have heard this theory that they came from, like, we all came from Africa, right? But then some Africans went out and to live in caves during the Ice Age. And then that's what they lost they adapted to the environment, and they lost their ability to kind of produce the melanin to the extent how it should be, right? That's where they get their complexion from. Then their hair texture changed because it needed to stay warm. It needed to cool the brain. So that's where it got straight. Now, we all came from Africa. We're all like black, right? And these Europeans, they're making this premise to say that they left. The reason why they look the way they are, they look the way they look phenotypically and genetically. They have the genetics that they have is because they migrated. It was the environment in which they migrated to that shaped their genetics, right? The very cold climate. That's one theory, right? But then I even question that too. Because that kind of sounds just as dumb as the theory of evolution with the goddamn monkeys, the apes. Because I just saw a meme, right? It was like, okay, if they had like the little classical image of the theory of evolution. We all know what that shit looked like, right? And so it was pointing to like the very first one, right? The ape. And it was like, okay, if there were millions of these, and then they pointed to the end of that evolution, the goddamn white man. And then there are millions of these. It's like, where the fuck the rest of them? Like the middle, where the hell they at? If there are millions of those, like where the fuck the middle motherfuckers at, right? Did they get killed off? They become extinct? So it makes you wonder, like, okay, if moving to a cold climate, if Africanoid people, right? Is that how I'm saying it right? You have Caucasoid, and then you have Africanoid, right? Africanoid. If Africanoid people were the original people, right? And then they moved to cold climates, wouldn't that mean that anybody living in a cold climate would lose their melanin? Now that might be true, because when you look at like yo, that shit kind of is true though, because our skin tone does change depending on geographically where we're at. When you're a warmer climate, you do produce more melanin. And when you're in colder climate, your skin kind of lighten up. I see that even just living in New York, right? Seeing the changes in the seasons and how my skin tone changes depending on the climate. Even when a woman is giving birth, like when she's pregnant, depending on the geographical region in which she is in, her body will produce more melanin, right? If it's in a very warm tropical climate, that baby's going to come out dark skinned. So I think that's amazing too. This is a lot to write. I don't like to generalize, but what I've seen in the cultural minority, especially within the black community, is a level of connection that is palpable and real. Coming back to white upper middle class American suburbia, I think that something has been lost from within. It's like we are insulated from each other by our houses, materialism. Yo, maybe I'm not supposed to read this comment. Because, like, the way YouTube work is crazy. I mean, not YouTube, but Facebook. We're insulated. He says, it's like we are insulated from each other by our houses, materialism, and money. I think we've hurt ourselves in doing so. I'm often confused about how anyone could treat another person as less than based upon our possessions or skin tone. It's so strange and foreign to me. If I could get anything across to y'all, it would be that I honor and love you. Please let go of the hatred and fear and try and feel the love that you have from me and many others like me. I'm a redhead with freckles and I sometimes can't stand my own skin color. It's super annoying when I'm in the sun and have to wear 50 SPF constantly, but it changes nothing but the heart I have for you and the people within your culture. I wish we could all focus more on that instead of our differences. Thank you for helping me understand your thoughts and feelings on cultural trauma. I'm listening. All right. So going back to the email, I gotta eat, yo. I haven't fucking eaten breakfast. I be doing that. Because I fast until like about 12 o'clock, then I eat. Alright. Do you think whites are inferior to Africans? Do you think they have a history, or has it all been stolen and manipulated by other cultures? A lot of typos here. Do I think whites have a history, or has it all been stolen and manipulated by other cultures? Wait, because it's like the way he wrote this, I feel like people need to proofread what they write before they send it. Just for clarity purposes, because otherwise it gets confusing, right? So I'm now trying to make out what he said, right? Let me see if I can make out what he's saying here. Do you think whites are inferior to Africans? Genetically? I mean, science can answer that question genetically. If you're talking about dominance versus recessive genes, biology can answer that. Do you think they have a history, or has it all been stolen and manipulated by other cultures? Are you talking they being white people have a history? And you're saying that if they have a history, maybe their history has been stolen and manipulated by other cultures. What? Imagine that. I don't know. He's making me think. Because he can't be talking about black people having a history or Africans having a history and it being manipulated by other cultures. Because if that is the question, right? If you're saying, do I think Africans have a history and that it's been stolen and manipulated by clear? Duh. Who don't fucking know that? I saw this meme, yo. I should have fucking screenshotted and posted, but it was this meme I saw, and I'm pretty sure most of y'all have seen it, where it says, like, this is a museum. I think it was a European museum, right? And that shit was empty as fuck. It was like, this is what it would look like if all that shit was returned back to its original owner. We know y'all, they done stole all that shit, man. If you really go and uncover history, yo, this is why history is so important. This is why I have respect for Tariq Nasheed and what he's doing. History is so important. A lot of our history has been whitewashed and it has been wiped the fuck completely away. To the extent where if we don't stop this shit, right? This shit does, if it continues, people gonna think that Africa, there were no black people in Africa, right? Do y'all know that there is a town, I believe they say in South Africa, that is strictly for white people? As if no other races are allowed. Now you say this person commented saying, "Oh, can we let go of the hate?" Black people don't hate white people. Let's be clear. We fucking hate racism and the shit that the life that we have to live. But if you're tired of hearing about racism as a white person, I know you heard and seen this before. Imagine how tired we are of fucking living through that shit. And if you're tired, then why the fuck are you here? You don't have to fucking watch this video. Take your ass on somewhere else. We have the right to talk about it. And I feel like that's really a part of the conditioning of white supremacy. To think that you have so much power to dictate what somebody else is able to feel, right? Is able to talk about, or their experience and how they fucking adapt to the systems that we have been succumbed to, right? It's not about hating oneself or just love yourself, and this, it's not about, I mean, that's part of it. But we're talking about systems here, right? People sometimes misinterpret what racism is to think, oh, it's about, oh, liking you. Oh, white people liking black people. A white person can love black people and still be racist. So you gotta know that racism is systematic. It's a system. Well-developed system, okay? It's not as simple as coming together and singing Kumbaya, right? Whole fucking societies are built upon this system of racism, and organizations and entities and people have built whole legacies on racism. Let's be clear here, off the backs of African people. So it's not that simple. I know you want to make it seem that simple as, oh, I think white people, when we have these talks, right, white people usually come and they say the things that you have said here. Sean. They come and they're like, oh, I like black people. And then they try to make black people feel like as if you can control or change the way a black person feels or thinks, right? By saying, oh, I love black people, and oh, I struggle with, being white and trying to identify and relate. Can't relate. You never, I feel like you do us injustice. The best thing to do is just listen, right? Just to sit back and, because you learn more. A wise person listens. When you go and try to interact, or you feel like you gotta say something back to a black person who is commenting on these issues that we face here in our black community, and then you try to give your example, it's not about that. It's just about listening, right? I've had I was making a video, and I was talking about like an intimate conversation I had with my father, which he told me that he used to pick cotton as a boy. I didn't know that, but he was like when he was a young boy, he used to pick cotton. He told me his grandmother who raised him is a white woman. She's a product, actually, from her father, who was a white English man, and his maid, black maid, which that created my father's grandmother who raised him. And so he's telling me how like they had a well and there would be white men pissing in the fucking well, right? And then someone is, I know who the person was. This was an old white friend that I had. Or can I say associate? I don't know if I should say friend, but an old white associate, former New York Times reporter. He gets on the video and is like, oh yeah, it's kind of like, you know, I remember how I grew up, and yeah, I was living on a farm, and he was trying to compare like his harshness of life compared to like my dad's. It doesn't compare. Just know, like, there's no comparison, right? Black people working on a farm, slaving on a fucking farm, picking cotton, not getting paid for it. I'm like, well, ask my dad what was the compensation, and he's like, oh, some food. They sent you home with food, right? That does not compare to you being a white man fucking living on a goddamn farm that your goddamn family own. Okay? So I just feel like white people need to just shut the hell up and just listen. That's it. Just listen. Because often, the reason why I say, because oftentimes your response is just, it kind of like adds, what they call it, like insult to injury. That's what it does. It just, you think that you're trying to soften a situation to make it better, to I don't know, appease a black person, make them feel like, no, your job isn't not to make a black person feel better, right? I'll feel great, okay? So don't think that because the way I express myself and my tone that something is wrong. I'm okay. I'm adding my perspective and answering the questions that have been presented here in this email, which I'm very thankful for the email. But don't misinterpret. Please don't misinterpret things. That's why I think it's better to just sit back and listen. I think that's the reason why a lot of y'all don't be commenting on my shit. Because y'all just like, damn. Alright. So, yeah, to answer that question about something being stolen from white culture, give an example. If you're watching this, right, this is where you can comment, right? If I'm asking you a question, this is where you can comment. If you think that, okay, black people have, let's say, black-washed white culture, right, as it relates to the topic of this video, or we've stolen aspects of the white culture and kind of adapted it as our own, right, or adopted it as our own, please give an example. Just drop it below so we can like have a discussion. This is how you move a conversation forward, right? Drop it below. He didn't give, the person who sent this email did not give specific examples, though we know that the way he's framing these questions, he clearly has a certain, you know, perspective on this matter, but he didn't give examples. What have black people stolen from white culture? Now, I know we can give a lot of examples of what white people have stolen from us. Shit. Even when it comes to goddamn patents, yo, like they created whole laws that we couldn't even own our own shit that we created. So a lot of things that were created here in America, you think a white man created it. And then you do go back and dig a little bit deeper and you'll find that, oh, I was a slave who created that. Person who didn't have any fucking rights. Alright, his last paragraph says, some nationalists believe that the world would be better without white people. Now, I have to say this because another person that reminds me, like, I think that was the same person who was kind of saying things about, he was saying about me painting the Egyptian gods black. He was like, oh, they not black, they were white, you stealing, you, what do you call it? You are misappropriating their culture. I'm like, their culture? Who is they? You talking about our fucking culture? This is my goddamn. How can I misappropriate my own goddamn culture? That's why I like the confusion, yo. But he started talk about nationalists. Like, I'm like, first of all, I'm not a nationalist. I'm a Pan-Africanist. That's not a nationalist necessarily. More like a globalist than a nationalist. And I think the confusion also comes because they think the way in which they do things, right? When we see like a response, and this is gonna be confusing, right? Because okay, there's white supremacy, and there's a KKK, right? And like, and I'm gonna talk about this. They got it coming for their ass, not in a sense like violent, but the laws of nature, right? There's a law of nature. When you got karma coming, you do wrong to nature, and black people were nature, right? You do wrong, it's gonna come back and bite you in the ass. If you built a whole civilization off of fraud, off of oppression, raping and pillaging people, right? You built a whole civilization. Don't you know that shit is going to fall? It's going to bite you in the ass, and I think that's what a lot of white people fear the most. You fear that because they know that the karma is coming, right? And so they like just be going overboard, you know. They got all these goddamn law enforcement set up, and they train law enforcement officers a certain way to target black people, and they're afraid. All this is happening out of fear, right? And I feel like the reason why he sent this email, these thoughts that he wrote here in this email are motivated by fear, by his own insecurities. You know, he know the answer to his own goddamn questions, apparently. But I think he's also seeking clarity too, from a black person who is deeply spiritual, deeply rooted. You know, when your eyes are woke, when your eyes are open, yo, you know what time. You know through all the bullshit. You see through all this facade, all this illusion, this fake shit that has been created, but we're participating in this game, so to speak. This stage. Right? Y'all know, even white people know it's a fucking stage, right? A lot of white people woke too. They like, man, buying into that bullshit, right? And so they want to go live off grid, you know. They know that the COVID-19 pandemic was a pandemic. They know. They see through the bullshit, right? Spiritually speaking. So he says, some nationalists believe that the world will be better without white people. Now, going back to this whole thing about intelligence, right, and superiority, I have to say this, that to white people's credit, right, to their defense, black people will be talking about, okay, we being genetically, biologically superior to white people. One can go with that idea, right? But then, on the flip side, I have to ask the question, if we got that goddamn superior, why the fuck? You know, right? Like, why the fuck? The reality is the way it is. Like, you know, and we're so fucking advanced. We got all these goddamn supernatural powers as gods of the earth. When the fuck those powers gonna kick in? Now, to our credit though, we've survived a lot, right? We've overcome a lot, so that's powerful in and of itself, just surviving, like overcoming. We're still here, basically, I'm saying. We still here, even though there have been, you know, wars against us. There's still a war against us. leave it to them, we will be fucking demolished and wiped off the planet, but we're still here, so we're powerful in that respect. Can't get rid of us. But I just would like to imagine that our reality would be much more great. Like we would, be farther along than what we are. With all this power that we supposedly have. But maybe we're seeing it through the wrong lens. By saying that, you're looking through a wrong lens. Like you're totally missing the power by looking at it through the lens of, like you were saying, materialism. So if you want to measure a civilization's power by how much they can materialize, is that really a good way to measure it? Right? What is materialism? I feel like materialism is just a manifestation of the power that we hold within. A lot of people demonize materialism. But when I look around, I see like all these magnificent buildings and skyscrapers. It's just like, that to me is the work of God, if you ask me. Right? To be able to develop systems like technology. Like that, I feel like that's God. So I don't think it's so much black and white when we say, oh, black people are powerful and white people are not. Like that's bland, or even the reverse, right? Because I think it's just about spirit and having an awareness of that, knowing that we're all powerful and not really falling victim to this whole stage of racism. I think that's what you were saying, Sean. Not falling victim to like this illusion of fucking the race war shit, because you get distracted and it takes away from you being able to thrive, to live, to appreciate life for what it's really meant for, right? To really understand the purpose of life. The purpose of life is not to be fucking fighting races, right? Fighting people because of their skin tone. That's so petty. That's so petty. Yo, that's petty. That's like, come on, you rob yourself of your true existence here on this earth. Being sucked up into the vortex. But yeah, I feel like that materialism is like an outward expression of the God power that we all have. And there has been a degree of conditioning to have people believe that they don't have that power. Only certain people possess the power to create great things with their mind and through their hands. And I think through religion, has warped the minds of people. So they do associate that materialism, that manifestation of the spirit realm and the physical realm. They associate that with evil. The fuck? So you're supposed to just breathe, right? Anything outside of breathing is evil. Just because you manifest things with your hands. So yeah, I think it's amazing that people create airplanes, to make it more convenient to be able to fly, get places in a short amount of time. Isn't that amazing? That's God. If it wasn't, it wouldn't be able to be manifested if it was evil. I feel like the fact that it's here shows you that it's meant to be. That's how I look at it. So, the answer to the question about do I think the world would be a better place without white people, I just feel like we all come together. Who knows the true mystery of why we are different colors, different races, speak different languages? The Bible made an attempt to answer that, as it related to the story of Babylon and people trying to, build a tower to reach heaven, and God, interrupted that shit and confused the languages and made people basically diverse, But I think that's not really for us to try to figure out, you know. I think there's greatness in everyone, no matter how much melanin we have. Because you see it. Like you see the power of the spirit working through people, no matter the race. I've experienced this myself. And it's like, if you just look at the external or the race, the color of a person, then like you're limiting yourself. You're shutting yourself out to blessings that are clearly laid before you because you're separating yourself by race, right? Shit. I know y'all heard this saying that, people call it God, I call it spirit, the universe, but it works in miraculous ways, and it's just to see that it can work through anything, anyone, without their permission. That's just how the universe works, without a person's permission. So fuck racism, I think we don't even have a choice when it comes to the natural law and order of the universe and what's meant to be. Because the universe would choose anybody. It can choose a white, racist white man to help a black man, and vice versa. Your whole life, your life can be dependent, your survival may be dependent upon that other group of people that you feel that you are so different from, or superior to, or inferior to. You just don't know. You gotta live life. You live life, then you learn. What do you think the world would look like with whites being minorities in their own country? Like in the EU and the US. Being minorities? I think we have an example of that, but you say in their own country. Even when you think of like, oh, their own country, right? Even that's an illusion. The land is ours and the fullness thereof. This whole idea of partitioning land and owning land. Like, you can't own land. That's silly. To own... Like, who the fuck came up with that idea, yo? That's not African. To say, okay, we're going to draw a map and say, okay, this is your land. We own this. Y'all can't come over here. To come over here, you got to get permission. I just feel like that's petty. That's not God-like behavior. Apparently that's what's been working. That's functional for them. But I don't feel like that's God-like. That's not a higher level of way of being to want to own land. Let alone, want to conquering a land that people have already established life on, right? And a way of living. Now you coming over there and you dictating how they live their life. And you're saying, okay, you're taking the land from them. I don't feel like that's not natural. One may argue it is natural, because that's just animal kingdom behavior, to want to dominate and control. But nah. So what do I think it would look like if whites were the minority? Shit, look, they the minority, but they went to South Africa. They're running that shit. Why do you think whites are becoming a minority in their own nations? So that's where I feel like this whole email is kind of driven by fear, because him being a white man, that's like kind of intuitive, innate within him to want to be concerned. White people are concerned about their survival. I think that's just natural for them to be concerned. And I made a comment, and I don't think I made it in the way that this person took it, but he really took it as a threat. About like white people dying off. It was like, white people not dying off. But even white people have said this. They feel like, they have a low birth rate. They're dying. Everybody dying, right? Everybody, we live and we die. But I'm saying the rate at which death is occurring, right, within a group of people is a very fast rate, and the things that's causing them death, right, are kind of like natural causes, so to speak. It's not like another race is taking them out, killing them necessarily. It's just like probably their own karma. But the way their biology is set up is killing them, right? Having a low fertility rate, it's just their biological makeup. And so, black people be fucking and procreating. And not to say, black people, we don't have inherent within us genetic flaws. Um, a lot of that shit I think is shaped by our environment though too, right? The stress of the environment, the context in which we live in, the systems in which we live in, and also what we eat, right? Our diet. That definitely will kill your biology, which creates diseases. And so, but white people, white people be procreating, y'all be fucking, and y'all be making, but I think white people are more concerned with just getting money and success. Like, white people probably good with having one child, two children, and black people, like, naturally, we like to make a lot of babies. Duh. I feel like that's why they got this whole created fucking Planned Parenthood, That, to me, is a form of genocide. The Planned Parenthood. Or they couch it and market it as, like, giving people a choice, right? To choose for women. But that's a whole nother story. I know it's political. A lot of things I say here are very political in nature. But at the end of the day, I'm so hungry, yo. I'm so hungry. It's time to break this fast. But at the end of the day, having conversations like this obviously will lead people to say the thing that Sean had mentioned in his long comment. Just like, let's just come together. Let's just love each other. Let's just. But it's like, these are the people are saying this are the people who fucking started the goddamn race war, right? So now I feel like you want to live in peace. It's like, so it makes black people kind of raise their eyebrow, like, but you started this shit, right? Can you imagine, like, a person, they started a fight with you, right? Whether it's like an intimate partner, your husband, your wife, a neighbor, right? They fucking cross the boundary and they start some shit with you. And so now when you get strapped up, right? Because they started with you. You know what I'm saying? They wanna go to war with you, right? They started with you. You get, you know what I'm saying, ready. Oh, they like, nah. I'm good. No. Peace. So I feel like that's kind of an example. Like, that's what white people, like, tend to do. It's just like, they started this shit, but then they want to turn around when black people start to talk about it, right? They're like, oh, no, kumbaya. But y'all started this shit, though. Like, make up your mind. What the fuck? People say want to get to know me. I get asked that a lot. I want to get to know more about you. Do you? All you gotta do is fucking watch my videos. Just join my live videos and I interact. You see, I'm very interactive here. But if you're saying on a personal level, that shit ain't happening. I think that's what it is. Cause y'all be inboxing me like, oh, I want to get to know you. Can you tell me more about yourself? For what? Why would I take time out my day to build with you? For what? What is the point here? No, it's not going to happen. You're just some random person online. That's how I look at it. And many people just like to waste people's time. They don't have shit to offer. They have nothing to say. They're not building anything. They just want to distract you. They want your attention. It's just like, for what? So I don't entertain, like, private conversations with people at all. You want to get to know me, just watch my video. Having said that, I feel like my mouth muscles are tired, okay? My tongue and my mouth muscles are tired. They need a break. I've been talking for the past, I'm pretty sure it's over an hour now. Oh my gosh, it's 2 hours. I can easily talk for 2 hours, yo. 3, 4, 5, and 10 hours. But I'm about to end this video on that note. Feel free to share your comments below. I think I answered his questions. I think he answered his own questions though. Share this video. I'll catch you guys later. I'm about to get me some food.